Well, it's been 5 weeks since Israel and Hamas declared a ceasefire in Gaza. Israel now controls just over half the territory and is already rebuilding there, leading to fears that the Strip could be divided for years to come.
This is one side of Gaza, rubble and destruction everywhere, overseen by Hamas. This is another, a satellite photo of a new Israeli army outpost. Between them is the so-called Yellow Line, the military border. When U.S. President Donald Trump celebrated the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas last month, he made bold promises.
But now at last, not only for Israelis, but also for Palestinians and for many others, the long and painful nightmare is finally over. And as the dust settles, the smoke fades, the debris is removed, and the ashes cleaned from the air, the day that breaks on a region transformed and a beautiful and much brighter future appears suddenly within your reach.
But that new day has not yet come for Gazans. Israel controls 53% of Gaza, including most of its farmland on its side of the Yellow Line. Most of the Strip's 2 million people are crammed into the Hamas-controlled area by the coast, many in tent cities, with winter on the way, their houses in rubble, and aid deliveries slow. Phase 1 of Trump's 20-point peace plan was a ceasefire. In Phase 2, Israel is supposed to withdraw further and Hamas is supposed to disarm. An international stabilization force is supposed to take over security as Gaza transitions to a technocratic government of Palestinians. Hamas has only agreed vaguely to some of the provisions.
Hamas is ready to hand over power now so that the reconstruction of Gaza can begin. The people of Gaza have a right to that.
Armed Hamas fighters are policing their side of the Yellow Line, and the group has not disarmed so far. Hamas has fought other armed factions, putting civilians even more at risk. Meanwhile, there are broad disagreements about how the stabilization force would work, which countries would contribute troops, and details of its power and responsibilities. There's no public pressure on Israel from the Trump administration to withdraw, leaving that date in the vague future. All of this leading to a delay in implementing Phase 2 that has international backers of the ceasefire worried.
But we really need to fill the vacuum within the Gaza Strip for security, for administration, and we really have to do that as soon as possible in order to avoid that Hamas is again taking over, I would say, power in the Gaza Strip. And that, of course, could be, again, a motivation for Israel to once again use military force. And that, of course, is not the way ahead.
So it is imperative that we have a timeline for the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza.
As Israel forges ahead with military construction on its side of the Yellow Line, it appears to be planning to stay in Gaza for the long haul.
Joining me now from Tel Aviv is Mairav Zonszein, senior analyst on Israel for the International Crisis Group. Mairav, it's looking increasingly like Gaza could end up effectively split between Israeli and Hamas-controlled areas. How real a risk is that now?
I think that is the current reality on the ground. And until and unless the Trump administration, together with other governments and heads of state who are engaged on the plan and who did back the UN resolution, until they actually fill in the substance and details of how the next phase is going to look like, we're going to remain in this status quo. It's a very precarious status quo. It's one, though, that has both advantages and disadvantages to both sides. So there are incentives for Hamas and Israel to move forward, but Israel also is clearly the one calling the shots. And as we know in the Middle East and in Israel-Palestine, when Israel takes territory, it oftentimes becomes from a temporary situation to a permanent one. And so it will require serious external resolve to change that.
Yeah, you talked a little bit there about this sort of, it's almost like this Phase 2 is kind of stuck. What is causing the deadlock, really? And is there any sign of movement coming in the future?
I mean, look, we have a plan on the table. It's the only game in town. There's supposed to be an international stabilization force. There's supposed to be a board of peace. None of these things have actually been constituted. We don't know which countries are going to contribute to it, and we don't know exactly what their mandate is going to be. Israel wants them to come in and disarm Hamas. That's a very unrealistic plan. The countries who have shown some kind of willingness are more interested in being a peacekeeping force, and we still have a situation in which there's ongoing combat. There's military force being used by Israel. So it's a very chaotic situation. And in order to get to this next phase, we need Trump and his people and some other governments to sit down and figure out how they're actually going to do it. Somebody is going to have to give. Israel's going to have to compromise on some things. Hamas is going to have to compromise and disarm in some way. Without that kind of movement, we're going to get nowhere.
Right now, we focus on civilians and the reconstruction plan. Reconstruction looks pretty limited to Israeli-controlled zones. So what does that mean for civilians in Hamas-held areas?
I mean, I don't think we're in reconstruction in any part of Gaza at this point. Israel, the only thing it's building is maybe some military outposts or, yellow bricks to show where the line is of withdrawal. I think the Trump plan envisions that the area that is completely depopulated of Palestinians, that is under Israeli control, would somehow start to be rebuilt, and then you would try to lure in Gazans to come to that side and be filtered out from Hamas in some way. I think that's the general idea, but that's something that I think is still quite far away at this point. And for all of the 2 million Palestinians crowded into barely, living conditions that are barely living conditions, that's an unsustainable reality. So there's going to have to be some kind of movement on that. Otherwise, it's going to be just a spiral of disaster, really for both sides.
And if we talk about the news that's happening right at the moment, there are several Palestinians killed in Israeli airstrikes. On Wednesday, Israel says it's targeted militants who fired shots at Israeli soldiers. Explain to us how these strikes are happening despite the ceasefire and what it might do to the ceasefire.
Well, the ceasefire, since it came into effect, has been a somewhat partial ceasefire. It's a ceasefire where Israel has complete freedom of operation, except in certain moments where Trump tries to pull it back. But essentially, Israel has killed over 250 Palestinians since the ceasefire went into effect. Every time Hamas, which has happened a few times, tries to shoot at, and we don't always know the exact circumstances of who exactly it was or whether they were told to or whether they are underground. But if they shoot at a soldier, then Israel feels like it has all of even more legitimacy to start firing from the air and from the ground at various targets in Gaza. So that's been the dynamic. The ceasefire has still held, but like we see in other areas in Lebanon and Syria, when Israel wants to, it fires, it shoots, and if the other side dares to shoot back, then all bets are off.
All right, Mairav, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much. That's Mairav Zonszein, the International Crisis Group in Tel Aviv.
Thank you.